Hey everybody, we're going to do a paper sculpture based on the artwork of Louise Nevelson today. So if you want to go and look her up and learn a little bit more about her artwork, you can start at theartstory.org and look up a little bit about what she was about and some of the ideas that she was working with. She's most well known for these giant sculpture walls where she would take pieces of wood and build these sculpture walls that were usually pretty tall, and they were relief sculptures, so they're designed to be looked at from the front only, and to the side or the rear there's not much to see. This one's called Royal Tide. There's a whole series of these. These are painted gold, but she often painted them black or white. And if you zoom in here at Artsy, you can see all the details of the different objects and things that she's attached into these boxes. But this is a good example because each one of these boxes is its own sort of self-contained picture. Okay, so each box. So what we would normally do in school is we would each make our own little paper sculpture box and then put these all together as one class or grade level sculpture wall. So we're going to go ahead and do this, and then maybe we can figure out a way to take pictures and make it kind of a virtual sculpture wall, or put it together into a little bit of a digital collage too. So we'll talk about that after we actually do the project. So let's go back over to the table and we'll talk about exactly what we're going to do. Okay, so I've got a piece of paper here. This is 12 inches by 12 inches, so it's pretty big, but you can use any size square. You'll just have a little bit smaller box. So at school we try to keep them all the same so that they kind of look like that Royal Tide one where they're all about the same size. But if we want to go ahead and make some of them different sized and take pictures of them, we could probably just resize the pictures and make everything work too. So what we're going to do is turn this flat square into a box. So there's a few different ways to do this, but this is the way we're going to do it for today. Okay, so what I'm going to do is fold it in half, and I'm not going to crease the whole thing, but I'm going to crease in the middle a little bit so I know where the center is. Okay, and if you want to make a mark where that center is with your pencil, you can make a little mark and then turn it and fold it the other direction and crease the center a little bit so you have a little plus, so you know exactly where the center of your paper is. Okay, alright, then we're going to fold the sides in so that they line up with the center, and we'll make a crease, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay. And then go ahead and open that back up and repeat with the other two sides. Okay. So we'll fold that there, and then we'll open this back up and we'll fold that. Okay. So now we'll have a smaller square in the center. Okay. And then these border lines here. Okay, and then in order to turn this into a box, we're going to cut on the top and the bottom. Okay, so we're going to make cuts here and here. You don't have to draw these lines, but I'm going to draw them so that you can see the idea a little bit better. So I'm going to make 4 cuts. Okay, I'm going to cut up here to where that intersection of those 2 lines is. And I'm going to cut here. I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the opposite side. Okay. And then we're going to fold those flaps, the square ones, in, and then we can tip up the box, and that makes the side of our box. Okay, so we'll glue everything together. So take your glue. Okay, the liquid glue probably holds stronger, but you could use a glue stick as well if you want to get it to hold itself together. Okay, I'll use dots of glue there on the corners like that. Okay, and then maybe a little bit with the glue stick just to help it dry a little faster. That'll hold it in place while the other glue is working. So I want to have those flaps on the inside when I do this. Okay, that way it just looks like a rectangle on the outside. Okay, so we're going to glue up those 4 corners there. Push it down. Do that. Flip it up. And push it down. Cool. So I have a rectangle on this side, this side, this side, this side, and we've got our box. Okay? So now we're going to fill this box up with some paper sculpture techniques. Okay? So there's a bunch of different things that you can do with it. So let me show you a couple of ideas. So go back to this, okay? And so this is our paper sculpture technique checklist, okay? Cutting, tearing, piercing, fringing, curling, bending, and crumpling, rolling a cylinder, spirals, accordion or fan folding, accordion springs, tabs, joining with slits, and combinations. So we're going to try to get all of those taken care of as a quick demonstration. Some of them aren't going to take very long, okay? And then some of them will be a little bit more complicated, but then I'll show you what we're going to try to do, okay? Because our goal, our sculpture challenge, is to use every bit of our big sheet of paper, okay? We got to think outside the box, but we want to stay inside the box, okay? And then use every technique at least once. In class, I tell kids they must survive the vigorous shake test. So once you get everything glued in there, you should turn it over and shake it upside down. And if your stuff falls out of it, then it is not surviving that shake test. So you want everything to be in there. So let's do cutting and tearing, piercing and fringing, this first row here. And then we will come back and work on some of these more complicated ones here in just a moment. Alright, so at school, I'd give everybody this giant piece of, well, I don't know if it's giant, but 12 by 18 paper, okay? And I would say you have to use all of this paper, you have to get it to fit inside of the box, okay? And of course, there's always somebody who's really smart and just crumples that whole piece of paper up and smashes it up into a ball and sticks it into the box and says, "I'm done, Mr. Moose," okay? Well, alright. That works, but you only used one technique, crumpling, okay? So you got to do all these other techniques that are on the list too. So nice try. We're not going to do it that way, okay? But do take a piece of paper and start building some of the other techniques, okay? Most of these are not that complicated, right? Cutting and tearing, okay? So you can cut the paper into pieces with your scissors, okay? Or you can tear the paper, okay, so that you have a different texture to the paper. So cutting and tearing are 2 different ways to work and take the paper off of there. Piercing would be where you take the paper and you poke holes in it, okay? The easiest way to do that is to take your piece of paper over to a place in your house that has some carpet or a mat outside or something like that, and just poke your pencil through it so that you have a bunch of pierced holes in it, and then you can have that texture on the paper as well, okay? So I'll grab one real fast and show you what that looks like. Alright, so here we go. So here's a piece of paper that has the piercing in it. So I just took it over and poked a whole bunch of holes in it over on the carpet so that I have a different texture to the paper, a different design to it, okay? So when you're working with this, you can try to build some kind of a scene or an actual picture to make it look like something if you want to try to do that, or you can just try the techniques out and build something kind of abstract, which would be pretty close to what Louise Nevelson was doing with her abstract. So cutting, tearing, piercing, okay? When we talk about fringing, we talk about cutting the paper, okay, with a lot of short little cuts like this, okay, so that it creates this fringe effect, okay? Then of course you can do curling and bending, okay, with your paper. So curling would be where you take the paper and you roll it around a pencil or some other object to get a curl in it, okay? And you can do that with individual pieces, okay, with the fringe, okay? Bending is just, of course, just bending the paper and twisting it around to create different kinds of shapes that way with the paper. And then crumpling was, first of all, that's one way to crumple. The other way would be, especially with the fringe, is to kind of crunch and crumple the fringe, and then you get some cool effects, okay, with that. So those would be those first ones, okay, that you've done. Okay, you can make a list of those or rewind back into the video and see that list again. The other thing that you want to try to make is a cylinder, okay? So get a rectangular piece of paper, a little bit longer, and you want to roll it together, okay, and then create a cylinder that way, okay? So you have to put a little bit of glue on it, okay, to get it to hold itself together. So that's the first part, rolling the cylinder, okay? And then getting that cylinder to be able to be glued in is a little bit tricky because this is just a thin edge of paper. So one of the other things that's on there is called tabs, okay? And tabs are basically when you just fold the edge of the paper and then you would put glue, okay, on this tab here and stick that down so that you're not trying to glue just the edge of the paper down. That's one way to connect something together, okay? With a cylinder, you can do a similar thing by cutting around the edge, sort of like you are making a fringe on the cylinder. And of course, you can make a fringe on the cylinder, but if you fold those into the middle like that, then you can kind of fill in the cylinder and create a bottom for it, depending on how long you make your tabs, okay? And then you can put glue on this and glue the cylinder in that way. Or you can fold the tabs out to the sides, okay, out this way, and then glue the cylinder in that way. And it makes it a little easier to attach it to the paper, okay? So making a spiral, okay, is something that some of you may have done before, okay? And you can make a spiral out of any shape you want, okay? It doesn't just have to be a circle, okay? So this can be a square spiral where I cut into the middle, okay? And then I can extend that and glue things on that way. Another cool thing to do is called split the spiral, where you cut through the middle of the spiral and go back in, and you're basically going to create two separate spirals this way. And when you get to the middle, those spirals will separate from each other and you'll have two separate spirals, okay, instead of just one, okay? So that's kind of a cool way to create some spirals, okay? The other thing is accordion folding or fan folding, right? And so you probably have done this before, where you flip the paper back and forth and fold it into an accordion, okay? It makes it a little bit like a spring, okay? But just flip it over every time, as you fold. Okay. And then you can put glue one part together and open it up as a fan. And that gives us some interesting textures. And so what you're working with here is light and shadow, because the way that you want to think about these things is, even though you might be building it on your table flat like this, we're going to turn it and attach it to the wall vertically, so things are going to be working that way. Okay, so the accordion fold and the fan fold. That gets us pretty close to the things I wanted to show you really fast here. And so the next part is paper springs. Okay, so you can do just an accordion fold, but if you want the spring to be stronger, then what you need is 2 pieces of paper that are nice and long and fairly thin, and then you're going to start those by starting them at a 90-degree angle, and then you're just going to fold them on top of each other. So on top, on top, on top, on top, on top, on top. And you can turn it a little bit, and if you spend some time and you're careful to keep everything 90 degrees, you'll be okay. But sometimes it'll come off of being perfectly 90 degrees, and that's okay if it doesn't bother you. It's not that big a deal. Okay, this is cool to do with 2 different colors of paper, but since we're sticking with white on this assignment, it's not going to have the multicolor effect here. But I'm going to fold those all the way up until I run out of space. Okay, and if I run out, I can trim the extra part off of there. Okay, and then it'll usually hold itself together pretty well without too much trouble. Okay, and then you can use that to attach things together. You can put a little bit of glue underneath the tabs and glue those down if you want to. Okay, but there's a paper spring right there that you can use to attach things together. So the next part is kind of taking these pieces and getting them put into the box. Okay, so gluing everything up and working within this idea of think inside the box, or think outside the box but stay inside the box. So let me get a few more things put together here, and I'm going to show you how to start adding things to your box for the assignment. Alright, so I got a few more things put together, and I wanted to talk about those ideas that we were talking about for the requirements. Okay, and so we've gone back through all these: cutting, tearing, piercing, fringing, curling, bending, crumpling. We've got a cylinder, spirals, accordion folding. We did the paper springs, the tabs. Okay, ooh, joining with slits, we didn't show that. Okay, so we should probably do that one. And then we're going to talk about combinations. Okay, so combinations basically just means that we are going to be doing the combination of techniques. Okay, it's not that complicated. I've cut this paper, I've fringed this paper, I've crumpled this paper, and I've folded it in an accordion fold. So I've got like 3 or 4 different techniques going in there. Okay, so if you cut a piece of paper and do anything else with it, then technically you made a combination of 2 techniques. But trying to do multiple techniques in one piece is sort of the idea of combination. So you want to have multiple techniques in your combos. All right, so that's the idea there. And then I made this really tall piece here. Okay, so we can talk about the idea of thinking outside the box and staying inside the box. Let's do the joining with slits real quick, because we forgot to talk about that one and show that one. So we'll go from there. Alright, so the whole idea of joining with slits is you can make a snip in each piece of paper, and then you can slide the pieces of paper together in order to join those together. So you cut about halfway through each piece of paper, and then you slide those together, and they hook themselves together. They're pretty strong. Of course, you could pull them apart if you really worked at it, but for the most part, they'll hold themselves together okay, and then you can build different structures using that idea of joining together with the slits. You can build some interesting structures by sliding those things together and letting them hold themselves together just by having those two pieces of paper intersect each other. Okay, so that's kind of cool. You can build some different sorts of shapes by having those 90-degree pieces slide together. Okay, all right, so that's all of the techniques. So I think we're going to go ahead and stop for this portion of the project, and then in part 2 I'll show you how to put things together and follow those final project guidelines that we showed on the other page. All right, for now, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.